BoobTube, I'm back. I finally got my new phone in the mail last night. It took a long time to get my wife to order it because she's the one that all the accounts under, and she's been so busy lately with work and the gym, all working from home, of course. But it's like once she's working from home, she never stops. So like I can never get her to do anything for me. So finally, about a week ago, got her to order my new phone, and it arrived last night. I got it all set up, so I've been looking forward to getting my face in the video done, because it feels like it's been forever. I think it's only been maybe a few weeks, a month at the most, but it literally feels like I haven't done one of these videos in forever. COVID is still going on. I mean, some things are starting to open up a little bit here and there with all sorts of rules around them, so it still doesn't seem like we're anywhere near the end of this. I'm still not back at work. Got 2 more months left of government coverage, so hopefully something happens by that time, either a new job or back at the old one. And in the meantime, I shaved my head. It's I love it, actually. I did it once in grade 12, and it was horrifying. I think maybe over the 20 or 30 years since I did that, I must have grown into my head, because it looks a lot better now. I'm much more comfortable with how my bald head looks, like how it looks compared to it did when I did it back in high school. So that's a good thing, because the hairline is disappearing a bit. So eventually this will probably be my reality. So to kind of get this glimpse of me being okay with it is kind of cool. So anyways, that's kind of we've just been in this nice little routine of with the weather nice lately, being outside in the backyard. I've been reading tons of books. We've been watching lots of shows and movies. We've been playing lots of vids. Haven't been out and about much, of course, because we're supposed to stay at home, but our pool is supposed to open today. The guys aren't here yet, but the pool is supposed to be opening up today, and so a few days after that I should have it all ready to go, and soon we'll be able to swim, which will be nice. So anyways, I better get on with this before this gets too long and there's shit floating around. So 5 things, and there's gonna be more to come. I'm probably gonna do one of these videos a day for the next 5 or 6 days, but the first batch of 5 things that I've been up to lately. First up, this book called Star Wars Alphabet Squadron. This story takes place about a month after Return of the Jedi. The rebellion is now turned into the New Republic, so going from a body that was operating in secret and disrupting the Empire and attacking them and that sort of thing, is now trying to turn into this governing body to rule over the whole galaxy, right? So resources are stretched thin, there's growing pains, all that sort of thing. So that's kind of what's going on. And in the meantime, one of the biggest threats that the Empire still has going on, there's all these factions that have kind of splintered off after the Emperor and the Death Star all blew up, and so they're kind of scattered and they're willy-nilly. But one of the biggest threats is a squadron of TIE fighters that are like a light, and it's called Shadow Wing. So there's this New Republic intelligence officer named Karen Aiden, who his number one priority for the New Republic, in at least in his eyes, is tracking down Shadow Wing and eliminating them. So, in order to do so, he, at this New Republic encampment called Traitor's Remorse, it's where Imperial defectors are sent. He has been watching this ex-Shadow Wing, actually a member of Shadow Wing named Yurika Quell. He's been watching her, and he keeps his eye on her, and he thinks he might be a good asset for a team he's trying to put together to track down Shadow Wing. Being a former member of it herself, he thinks she might bring some insights and some motivation into ferreting them out and destroying them. She defected from the Empire after Operation Cinder was enacted, after the Emperor was destroyed. And if you don't know Operation Cinder, play Star Wars Battlefront 2 for PS4 and whatever else it's on the Xbox. I don't know, whatever. But that's the main storyline in that game, is the whole plot revolving around Operation Cinder, and it's awesome. So that's kind of a neat tie-in into this book, is that the plot of that game. So he recruits her, and while this is going on, there's a New Republic ship called the Helion's Dare that is running from actual Shadow Wing, is the ships that are pursuing it, and they're catching up to it and picking off its guard, its starships that's guarding it one by one. And to try and escape Shadow Wing, it's headed into this weird region of space called the Oradal Cluster, and in order to navigate it, they have to plan all these micro hyperspace jumps. So each time they come out of hyperspace, Shadow Wing shows up afterwards, picks off a few more of its starship, that starships that are protecting it, and as they get closer and closer to exiting the cluster, there's less and less protection as these ships are being picked off. So eventually, it does get free, the last two starships that escape before the Hellions Dare is destroyed carries back the vital intel that it had been trying to escape with. And so getting back to Karen and Yurika, her primary task, first and foremost, is to recruit another Imperial defector named Nath Tencent, who is like this kind of swashbuckling rogue character, kind of like Han Solo in a way, as another member of the team. And then rounding out the team are the two surviving pilots that were protecting the Hellions Dare, Will Lark and Chasna Chaddick. And the fifth member is a mysterious woman who wears armor. You never see what she looks like, whether she's humanoid or alien. And her name is Kairos. So these five misfits are all kind of thrown together into this group. Two Imperial defectors, two Rebel starship pilots, and then this wild card that's Kairos. So Yurika kind of has to find a way to bring this team together. All she wants to do is fly again. That's her main task. And of course, she's not given that leash just yet. Mainly it's intelligence gathering and stuff like that at the beginning. And when they are given their first test, they kind of fail, so they're reined back in a little bit. But eventually they start they operate out of the Lodestar, which is a ship that's piloted by legendary General Hera Syndulla of the Rebels TV show, and they operate out of her ship. And as they eventually given more responsibilities, they start proving that they are capable, and they start coming together as a group. And then the action culminates. I forget the name of the world, but they finally ferret out Shadow Wing's kind of base of operations and the planet that it's on. And the action culminates when they attack this Pandem Nye, I think the planet's called, or it's a cluster of asteroids or something. And then that's where the kind of action in this book culminates, and the story comes to a close. Now, it doesn't totally come to a close because this is supposed to be a trilogy, so there is more to come from this new group of heroes for the New Republic. Next up, as you know, we were watching some Nightmare on Elm Street movies when I last left off. We did not stop. Next up, Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors. My favorite of all the Nightmare movies. Arguably with the first, because you know the original's always awesome. In this one, another Elm Street kid named Kristen Parker starts having dreams about this weird man named Freddy Krueger who wears the half fedora, the striped sweater, and the knives on his hands. And she gets nicked in her dreams a couple times and is totally freaking out. Her mom thinks she's gone insane, so she sends her to this psychiatric hospital where she is under the care of a doctor named Neil Gordon, I think his name is. Now, she's freaking out when she gets there because they're trying to sedate her, and the last thing she wants to do is fall asleep. As she gets used to life in the, whatever you call it, sanitarium, asylum, whatever they are, psycho wards, she meets some other kids that are suffering from the same sort of dreams. There's Kincaid, who's kind of a tough-talking, quick to anger, wants to get in fights sort of guy. There is Phil, who's just a kind of a cool, happy-go-lucky guy who sleepwalks a lot. Taryn, a former drug user who is getting clean. Jennifer, an aspiring TV actress who burns herself with cigarettes to stay awake all the time. Will, who's in a wheelchair after a failed suicide attempt, who's kind of a Dungeons and Dragons kind of nerd kind of fella. And then the last one is, Joey. Joey, who doesn't talk. He doesn't say a word. He's the youngest of the bunch. He's suffered some sort of trauma as a youngster, and he hasn't talked since. So Kristen falls in with these kids and gets to know them, gets to like them, but soon enough they get picked off. Phil dies in a sleepwalking accident, which of course is Freddy manipulating him. Jennifer gets her head bashed into a TV, which again of course is Fred up to his tricks. And eventually Kristen is kind of appeased when a new intern psychologist joins the staff. One Nancy Thompson. Yes, Nancy from the original Nightmare on Elm Street movie, who was first tormented by Freddy in his dream machinations. So, and she quickly ingrains herself as a trusted person to the kids because she knows exactly what they're talking about. She knows she can complete the nursery rhyme that the kids sing in their dreams. And so she manages to convince Neil to some degree that what these kids are going through is a real thing. It's not psychoses brought on by guilt or whatever mumbo jumbo they're talking. This is a real situation. A real killer is killing them in their dreams, sort of thing. So they have a little group session and go under, and they all meet each other in the dream. But Freddy takes Joey prisoner, and so they all come back out of it. And in real life, Joey's not dead because Fred's got him prisoner, so he's actually in a coma in real life. So the lead doctor on staff, who believes none of this malarkey, is like, you two are both fired. So Nancy and Neil are off the staff anymore. So Kristen and all of her remaining friends are kind of unprotected because this head nurse is like, sedate them, put them in the quiet room, whatever. She doesn't believe any of this stuff. So then Nancy and Neil go to Nancy's father, Donald, and saying, Freddy's back. How do we stop this asshole once and for all, right? And he's like, you got to get his bones and bury them with holy water and a holy ground, all that, those two bits there. So they're like, well, where's his bones? And Donald's like, I ain't going back there. And eventually Neil's like, oh, no, you are. He gets strong arms the cop. So eventually Nancy splits off, tries to go save the kids at the ward. Well, Neil goes with Donald to a junkyard to retrieve Freddy's bones out of the boot of a old car in the middle of this junkyard and bury them. So as these two divergent plot lines are going on, Kristen goes to sleep and somehow pulls Nancy into her dream. That's kind of her talent. Whereas the other kids in their dreams all discover their talents. Will becomes this kind of wizard guy. Taryn comes this kind of chick with switchblades and stuff. Kincaid's like a big strong wrestler guy. And as they go into the dream and try and kick Freddy's ass, Donald and Neil are trying to bury Freddy's bones. So you've got them trying to fight Freddy, bones trying to be buried. Freddy senses his bones are trying to be buried, which distracts him away from the kids and him trying to murder the kids. So it's kind of this two-sided back and forth affair at the end of the movie where they're trying to kill Freddy once and for all, and the faster they do it, the more kids they're going to save that aren't going to die in this adventure. So, and it's just a matter of can they get Freddy dead and buried before he kills everyone and he's on to the next kid down the street, or will he do that? Is he free and easy to move on? So there's something about this movie. I don't know exactly what it is, but there's something about the Dream Warriors that if I'm ever, want to watch one of the Nightmare movies, it's always mostly that one, and sometimes the original. I like I said, I think the way the kids die in this movie, the way they tailor the deaths to kind of the type of people they are, like Jennifer with the TV and Phil with the sleepwalking, and he makes these puppets, and Freddy kind of strings them along as a marionette. That's how he dies, sleepwalking. The creativity behind the characters and the way the characters die and stuff, and the way Kristen pulls people into her dream and they can all fight together, and then of course burying the bones, which was a cool sequence too. There's so many things to love about that movie, that it's just I think that's why it's ended up being my favorite. Next up, we had also started the Terminator franchise, so the next movie up was the best easily of the bunch, T2, Judgment Day. In this movie, it's 1995, so it's 11 years after the original Terminator. John Connor is born, and he's a young teenager. Or is he even a teenager? I think he's like, maybe he's 13, 14, 15, something like that. And he's living with foster parents because Sarah Connor, having prepared John for his whole life to eventually be this hero and be able to fight back and know how to do stuff, eventually got caught when trying to bomb a computer factory or something like that, and is put in a psycho ward, another psycho ward, right? So soon enough, we see John heading out from his foster home's place one day, going to the mall with his friend to the arcade, and we see the arrival of 2 time travelers. First up, dude ends up taking on a cop form. Second dude, oh, it's the Terminator from the original movie. Well, that's bad news. He's the bad guy, right? No, no, no. The first Terminator guy is the bad guy. The second Terminator, that looks like Arnie, that is Arnie, is sent back in time by John Connor when they got a Terminator, a T-100 unit, reprogrammed it to go back in time and protect John from this threat. Now, the only problem is when these 2 Terminators meet at the mall, and John's like, what the hell? This Terminator that's trying to kill John is a new breed. It's basically liquid metal. It can take on the form of anything it touches. That is its relative kind of size, and it can also reform its limbs to make like sharp knives and stuff like that. So the thing is a lethal killing machine, and Arnie, the older model Terminator, is going to be in tough against this thing. So once they find each other at the mall and the fight begins, the rest of the movie is just kind of non-stop action. The first step after John and the T-100 get away from the newer Terminator is John wants to go get his mother out of the psycho ward because he realizes he always discounted her claims about the Judgment Day and all this stuff, but seeing these Terminators in action, he goes, it was all true. We got to get mom. So they go to the psycho ward, break her out, but of course the T-1000 is after them, and another fight ensues there. And after they gain freedom again, they talk about, well, how can we prevent Judgment Day? And Sarah's like, Cyberdyne, Skynet. Let's stop the computer before it had the ability to become a free-thinking computer. So they settle on a target named Miles Dyson, who works for Cyberdyne Systems and was the guy that came up with the computer chip that eventually gave rise to Skynet and the super-thinking computer. So Sarah rushes off before John and the Terminator can kind of catch up to her in an attempt to assassinate this guy, Miles Dyson. And John is like, no, you can't do that. You can't just kill him. So they race to catch up with her and find that she couldn't go through with it anyway. So the 3 of them explain to Miles Dyson what he did. He doesn't believe them. So then the Terminator basically rips its arm open and goes, I'm a robot. This is real. And Miles Dyson is like, what the shit? And he's like, okay, yeah, we have to ruin all this. So he agrees to go to the Cyberdyne lab with them in the middle of the night and take the arm that was left at the site of the original Terminator at the end of the Terminator movie, that when Sarah compressed it in the giant press, and left behind out of that wreckage was one hand and a chip, which was what Miles was using to kind of craft all this new technology out of. So they go back there to get the hand and the chip, but the authorities are alerted, so's the T-1000. So then there's another massive firefight for them to get out of this building. And when they do escape, the T-1000 gives chase, and then that's when kind of the movie all finishes up in the middle of like I guess it's a steel mill with molten lava and lots of chains and machines and stuff like that. And that's when it's kind of the last fight between the T-100 and the T-1000, and of course John and Sarah in the middle of it all, and the fate of the universe, of course, at stake. And I don't want to spoil it if you've never seen it, but it's awesome. The ending's awesome. The whole movie is awesome. I remember when this came out back in the day, and it was like, there'd already been some really good movies made, special effects wise. The original Star Wars trilogy kind of is where things really started to pick up, and that pushed things forward leaps and bounds, and they kept on building upon that. But the T2 movie at the time was probably one of the best movies for that time of like an advance in movie making technology, and some of the stuff they did with that T-1000 in his molten form, and of course all the robotics involved and stuff like that with the other Terminator machines, and then just the sheer number of vehicle crashes and explosions and stuff like that. It's just there's always like a big rig or a big truck chase involved in the Terminator movies, and in this one there was 2 really good ones. So it's just everything was to the nines in this movie basically, and it shows in the final product. Easily the best of the Terminator franchise, and probably one of the best movies of all time in the sci-fi action kind of genre, right? Next up, another movie. A while back, I found a whole bunch of weird Marvel animated movies at Dollarama. So I was like, well, these are dirt cheap, so I may as well get them all. And the first one I got is called Iron Man Extremis. And I actually read a book about this story a long time ago. And just before I get on, these are animated movies, and it's basically like they've taken all these stories are inspired by certain plot lines in graphic novels, and they've basically put the graphic novel page to the screen. So I think it's the same drawings from the graphic novels, but they give it a bit of animation and movement, and of course noise, sound effects and voiceovers and stuff like that. So it's basically like a graphic novel come to life on screen sort of thing. So it's not an actual animated movie. It's something in between a graphic novel and an animated movie. It's different, that's for sure. So I've reading the reviews on it, I've known that some people hate them and some people really like them. And I'm kind of in the middle of the road. Like, I paid $4 for this, and it's probably that's what it's worth. It's good, I liked it, but it's not an animated movie, right? So it's but it's cool, and I love superhero stuff. So to get these and kind of see the different stories that have been written and brought to life, I'll never pass up a chance to do that, especially when they're dirt cheap. So anyways, Iron Man Extremis starts off. Tony Stark is going through the mundane challenge of everyday running Stark Industries and being a playboy millionaire genius or whatever, and at the same time he's agreed to do this kind of film for a famous documentary producer that Tony really admires. And the interview kind of goes south when this guy seems to start turning on Tony and questioning him about getting his start in weapons development and stuff like that. And in the meantime, over in thousands of miles away in Texas at a lab called Future Farm, there has been bad tidings. Dr. Aldrich Killian and his partner Maya Hansen have been developing another sort of super soldier serum. This the same type of thing that gave Captain America his powers, and only it didn't work out. It's got all this volatile effects to it, and so they're not having any success, and it doesn't look like this thing is ever going to be right and get approval. So as we pick up on this Aldrich Killian, he's crafting a suicide note and printing it out on his printer at the office before he blows his brains all over the wall. He's discovered, the note's discovered, and they find out that Maya finds out that Aldrich has sold the serum to a gang of mercenaries, and one of them, a guy named Malin, has taken the serum, and it's turned him into this vile killing machine with all these extraordinary powers. And Maya, having known Tony from the lecture circuit years ago, calls him up and asks him for help. So he flies directly to Texas and gets the 411 from Maya, and then sets off after this Malin fella, who turns out is a lot stronger than Tony had anticipated, and gives Tony a pretty good beatdown. And so then he has to go back to Texas with his tail between his legs, and is like, I need an upgrade. So he engineers an upgrade for himself and his suit through Maya's kind of super soldier serum, and he modifies it a bit, and so he's able to basically, he doesn't have to give his suit commands anymore. They're basically linked, and he just thinks it, and the suit automatically does it. So there's no lag time, there's no second guessing, it's just instinct. So he sets out after Malin again, who is on his way to Washington, D.C., because Malin is a disgruntled with the government kind of guy, big brother, never did anything for me, the little guy. And so he's going to Washington, D.C. to display his, or voice his displeasure, I guess, directly to the powers in charge. And of course, that's going to be a disaster. So Iron Man has to rush to the scene there and defuse that and save the day. Yeah, so that was that movie. Again, cool animation, I like it, but it's just, I'm not sure it's my jam, so, but again, loved watching it just to see the story and stuff like that. Even though that one I'd already read, most of the other ones are new to me, as you will see in the coming videos. Last up, PS3 game, Need for Speed Hot Pursuit. If you remember, not that long ago, I mentioned a game called Need for Speed Rivals on the PS4, and in it you could play on either the side of the street racers or the side of the cops, and this is basically the same thing, kind of its predecessor, I guess. And in Rivals, there was kind of a story mode going on. Like there were actually kind of cutscenes here and there, not really detailed ones like there is in like the original Need for Speed game, but enough to kind of have some sort of a story involved. This one doesn't have that. There is kind of a story, like that you're basically the setting is Seacrest County, and there's basically these street racers causing all these problems, and the cops are out to stop them. That's basically it. It's a very minimal story, whereas Rivals had a bit more of a story involved. So once you start this game, you just pick your side. You can play as the street racers or as the cops, and you can swap back and forth between them as you want. I always choose to do one at a time, and I started with the racers in this one, and then did the cops afterwards. And it's just basically, there's a certain amount of events in the game that you can play, and they will unlock as you proceed along and win races and reach a certain level of success. And as you unlock these different races and gain levels, you will unlock new cars and new tech and new levels of tech. Whether you're playing with the racers or the cops, a lot of races you'll have tech armed. Like for the street racers, they have EMP bursts that can disable other cars, stuff like that. The cops have like spike strips and roadblocks they can put up. So as you go along, depending on the type of event, sometimes you have tech available to use, sometimes you don't. But there's different types of events you can do. Like there's time trials. You have to get from point A to point B within a certain time limit. Or there is hot pursuits, where it's you as the street racer racing against a bunch of other street racers, and there's a whole bunch of cops also chasing you. So it's basically chaos. And then there's other ones where it's just a straight up street race against other street racers, and stuff like that. So there's all different sorts of events, and depending on your level and the type of event, you'll have different types of tech available to help you out along the way. And you just work your way through each faction's list of missions, and if you can defeat them all, you get one final last event that's kind of the granddaddy event, and if you beat it, then you've beaten the game for that particular faction. So this game was really good. Rivals was like I said, it had a story to it, but it was kind of a half-assed story. It wasn't super in-depth like on some of the other Need for Speed games, but it also wasn't basic like this one. So if you're going to do a story mode, like I say, do it or don't. The kind of halfway in between just seems kind of like, it's just kind of a waste of time when you're doing these small cutscenes in between that don't really matter. But if you have a longer in-depth story, then it's worth watching it, right? So, but anyways, that's why I kind of like this game better than Rivals. Rivals was better in terms of the overall graphics and gameplay and stuff because it is newer. But in terms of the way the game was set up and ease of play and stuff like that, I liked Hot Pursuit better than Rivals. But either way, both games are great, and I highly recommend each of them. But this game on the PS3 was a lot of fun. So anyways, that's it. That's the 5 for now. I see piles down here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 other piles I got to go through, but again, I'm limited for time, so I can only do so many of them at a time. And hopefully, too, as you'll see, I got a newer phone, so I hope the image in here is better than on my old phone because it was older. But just looking at the camera on this one to start, it does look a lot crisper than the old one. So I hope the quality of my videos will also improve with this new phone. So anyways, that's it for now. We will see you probably tomorrow.